The best thing this guy ever did for himself, for anybody, is get a vasectomy, okay? That is the only good thing he's done in this entire book. No person, fictional or otherwise, has boiled my blood more than this man in this book. Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Is back talking about books. We are going to be talking about My Dark Vanessa. It is a book written by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I believe this was her first book that she has published. I've heard a lot of people talk about this book, or I've seen this book go around in the reading community, but I had never read it myself. It was a very popular book, I believe a couple years ago. Finally read it, and I've never been the same. Just to start off, there are trigger warnings. We are talking about grooming, about SA, about R-wording, gaslighting. All of those things happen in this book. I have never read a book before, except Atonement, but this is worse than Atonement, okay? If you've ever read Atonement and Bryony and whatever she did, think about that much frustration times 1,000. I have never felt more frustrated turning pages in a book than when I was reading this. The amount of times, even within the first few chapters, I wanted to take this book and throw it across the room is insurmountable. Is that even the right word that I use? Let me look it up. It's insane the amount of times I screamed into my pillow because of what was happening in this book. I'm just gonna start off by saying I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. As a book, it is a great book, but it is not for everybody. And that is my overall general consensus on this book. If you have never heard about My Dark Vanessa, it follows a girl named Vanessa who at the age of 15 years old gets into a relationship with her 42, I believe he's 42-year-old teacher. And the years after first meeting her teacher, how her life has changed, how she's dealt with it, how she's coped, and basically her life and her psychology through all of this. It is the story of a survivor of grooming, of SA, of R-wording, of statutory, the psychology of what happens of a person that has gone through this. And I think I've never read a book that so poignantly and vividly explains the psychology of it and like what a person might be thinking while they're going through this, especially in the Me Too movement. Why people said, why are people speaking up all of a sudden? Why don't people speak up about the things that happen to them? A lot of the times they might not even think that they were a victim or went through anything horrible. And Vanessa is one of those people as well. She's not a likable character. You aren't in love with her and the things that she chooses and the things that she says sometimes, but you understand her and you follow her throughout the story. I think the way that it is written is in a way that isn't too on the nose. It was written really well, but it does not lose any detail, meaning that every horrible thing that you could ever imagine, the triggers that I was saying, happens in detail. So if that is something that you cannot handle, just watch this review. If you can even handle this review, because we are talking about these topics, I would say pick up a rom-com and go about your day. This book is not for everybody. I hated this book, but I loved it, if that makes sense. Like, I hate it because of everything that's in here. The pages in here disgust me, but I think as a book, as what it was trying to say, I thought it did a great job, so I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It follows Vanessa and Strain, who is her 42-year-old teacher, at the beginnings of the relationship all the way to the end, 17 years later, and we get that flashback and flash forward throughout time. I have a couple of videos as I was reading the book about how frustrating it was to read, so I'll insert those clips here. Okay, reading vlog time, I guess, a little bit, because literally this book is infuriating as like I cannot. The amount of times I've screamed reading this book. I started this book, page 3, already screaming, already wanting to throw the book across the room, even more than reading Atonement, and I freaking wanted to throw that across the room reading Atonement. The way that this man says gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, he is so manipulative and he is the definition of gaslight. He the gaslighting he does, okay? Let me just read this passage. It's page 244. Vanessa, at this point, has driven all the way to Strain, who is her ex-teacher, who she had a relationship with, this old man,
Brother,
goes to his house to confront him about the fact that she just found out that he was the reason that she got kicked out of the school because he pushed it. And this man, oh my god. She says this, "I didn't know I was gonna get expelled. You never told me that was gonna happen." He lifts his shoulders. "My bad, oh well." Even if it wasn't spelled out, it must have been obvious that was the only way we were gonna wrangle our way out of the utter hell that threatened us. You mean it was the only way you were gonna get away with not going to jail? Well, yes, that was absolutely part of my thinking, of course it was. But what about me? Because she's been fucking hell, a traumatic experience, and we see her experience through this whole book, and he says, "What about you? Look at you. Aren't you okay? You certainly look okay. You look beautiful." Mother... Shut up. Purple, by the way, in this book means infuriating, okay? And can you tell every single scene this man is in? You can literally see it. Oh, purple here. Purple in the beginning. What do you mean? What do you mean? What about you? Look at you. Aren't you okay? You certainly look okay. You selfish mother... You selfish mother... Because you don't understand what she has been through. The way that you have changed the course of her life, the way that she views the world, like she's not even a full person anymore, basically, is what I'm getting from the book. All you can think about is yourself, and you drastically changed this girl's life. He really thought that he could just do this selfish little thing, have this little affair, a 42-year-old with a 16, 15-year-old girl, pedo. You really thought you could do that? And that she would graduate high school, like say consequences don't exist. You really thought she was just gonna graduate high school and forget all about you and think it would not change her at all. That the experience, that every single, first of all, sexual encounter and any quote unquote romantic encounter, you have basically molded that. You really thought that you could just selfishly have this affair with your student and that she was just gonna graduate and it wasn't gonna affect her, and him trying to have this whole relationship and make it seem like he's a good person. The whole time he's trying to guilt trip himself into thinking he's a good person. No, bitch. No, bitch. I will not allow that to happen. Anyway, that was my rant for the day. Okay, it's literally been 2 seconds since I turned off the camera and I just kept reading, and look at the way that this man, of course he's an English teacher because he probably knows his way with words. Look, I understand that you're angry, that you feel hurt, but I did the best I could. I was terrified, you know? So instincts kicked in. I wanted to protect myself, sure, but you were also at the forefront of my mind as well. No, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. Getting you away from Broderick saved you from an investigation that might have wrecked you. How do you know that? It would have wrecked you more. And she would have rightfully so, like even her friend Jenny years later was there for her, but whatever. Your name in the papers, she could have been anonymous, but let's keep going. A notoriety you have no control over, following you like a pal, that is still happening to her. She literally moved schools miles and miles away. This is following her still, but people also on top of it think she's a liar. They think that she lied about this relationship you have. Talk about something following you. People think, not only do they think she is a derogatory, but not only do they think that, they think that she's a little psychotic, that she had a huge crush on her teacher and created all these lies about it. You wouldn't have wanted that, the notoriety. You wouldn't have survived it. What do you know about what she can survive? All this time, I assumed you understood why I did it. I even thought you'd forgiven me. Wishful thinking, I guess. I could have projected too much wisdom onto you. I know I did that at times. If you open up the dictionary, Google what the term boiling my blood means, it's just gonna be a picture of him. Because no person, fictional or otherwise, has boiled my blood more than this man in this book. This chapter, I'm in the same chapter. This chapter is eating me alive. I swear to God. I cannot handle it. What about justice? Justice? You're looking to bring me to justice? To do that, honey, you have to believe that I unduly harmed you. Do you believe that? Because if you believe that, tell me now and I'll turn myself in. If you think I should go to prison, lose all of my freedoms, and be branded a monster for the rest of my life just because I had the bad luck, he had the bad luck of falling in love with a teenager, as a 40-year-old man, mind you, an ugly one at that, then please let me know right now. The sarcasm, I can hear the sarcasm through his voice, okay? Jemmy, calm down. He's a fictional character, relax. The way that he tries to guilt trip her, to gaslight her, to manipulate her, to groom her, like, awards should be given for that. He should win the Olympics for grooming, the Olympics for master manipulation, because that is crazy. Like, making her feel guilty. He literally said it as if it wasn't the most horrendous statement I've ever heard in my life. God forbid I am a monster and be branded a monster and I go to prison for the rest of my life because I had the bad luck of falling in love with a teenager as a 40-year-old ugly old man who also I was teaching, so there was a power imbalance as well. God forbid I'm seen as a monster. It was just bad luck. It wasn't like I chose to manipulate. Vanessa, my dear, I am just, it boils my blood. Okay, this is actually hilarious because I keep turning on and off the camera in a couple of pages. It's been agony without you here, Vanessa. Vanessa, think about this. By leaving, you got to escape. Meanwhile, I had to spend my days in a place that only reminded me of you. Every day, I had to teach in a room where we met. Watch other students sit at your spot at the table. I don't even use my office anymore. As if over the years after the fact, he hadn't done this to multiple other girls in the same classroom. As you can see, it's just so, I couldn't when I was reading it. It explains Vanessa and who she is. Like, she is not a likable person. And I would think I was reading some Goodreads reviews saying that, like, she's not really a fully realized character. There's not really much to her. She's kind of like a blank slate. And honestly, I wouldn't see that as a negative of the book. I feel like it's done on purpose. A lot of this book and what it's trying to say is that she's lost herself throughout the years, throughout the 17 plus years that she's known Strain, the teacher, and had this relationship with him. She's lost a lot of herself and a lot of the choices that she makes, the life things that she goes through, the potential that she had as a person, all evolved and the world revolved around her relationship with Strain, with her teacher. It's really subtle the way that things in this book happen as well, and I really loved that too. Nothing was so generic, so told to you. I think there's some points where it full out told you certain things, especially at the end, but I think it was earned. I don't think that there was anything in this book that felt like, oh my god, really? A book that's like, oh, you were a victim. There was a lot of subtlety in these pages, but it is really hard to read. Would I ever read it again? No. I don't think I would ever put myself through reading this again. Just like A Little Life. I would put this on the same status as A Little Life. It is just so horrible to read. If you like yourself even a little bit, I don't think you would want to read it again just because of all of the sadness and heartache that you get while reading it. If you like yourself as a person, you wouldn't want to put yourself through it. So I think if you can stomach it, it is good to read once to understand it, to get the story, because I think it's a very poignant story. But after that, I don't think it's something that's like, oh my god, I'm really bored. What do I want to read? Oh, let me pick up this book. It's so fun. Oh my god, Dark Vanessa, I'm gonna read. No, I don't think that, okay? The character of Vanessa, she is a lonely girl. She was vulnerable when she is 15. She's lonely, she's vulnerable. She goes to a boarding school, so her family is not really around her. She had just had this little mini breakup with her best friend. She is in a place at the beginning of the book where she is in a very vulnerable position. She just wants someone to love her, someone to protect her. I think that's what a lot of people want, right? Especially when you are in your teenage years. That's what I wanted when I was in my teenage years. She wanted praise. She wanted to feel special. In a sort of twisted way, Strain did give that to her. You can kind of see how a start of this type of relationship happened. I think a lot of the times when we are talking about these scenarios, we think, oh, I would never put myself in that kind of position. I would just think this guy's creepy and be like, ew, that's disgusting, and just walk away. But there's a way in which people who do this like to prey on the vulnerable, prey on people who are in the wrong place at the wrong time, to be in a position where this can happen to them, who might be needing a certain thing that they gaslight and manipulate you. As the relationship with Vanessa and Strain progresses, she feels more outside of herself. She doesn't feel like herself. A lot of the experiences she has, she talks about having these out-of-body experiences while they are doing it. She is in another room. Her mind is in another room, watching the dog laying on the couch while they are in this intimate situation, just keeping herself at a distance. And the way that it's written is just so heartbreaking and sad. You understand it on a fundamental level. Why this happened, why she did it, and the blame that Vanessa put on herself, saying, oh, I chose this, I wanted it, I asked for it, along with all of the other people that after her, there were others, right? Strain went after other girls after Vanessa, and the blame she put on herself because she was the first, thinking that he couldn't control himself. Vanessa felt like, oh, I was his temptress. She feels like maybe I am at fault for these other girls that are now 17 years later accusing him of abusing them. She also is characterized as this girl who has so much potential, and she is an amazing writer. She's so creative, just a very talented, gifted person. And because of this relationship, all of that is just sort of stripped away. Like, this old, ugly ass, old mother, ugly ass, bitch ass, mother man ruined it. Every single scene that this nasty, old, ugly man is in, he says something every single time. I want to throw the book across the room. Every single time I see his name on a page, I'm like, not this guy again, not this guy again. Gaslight. Every single situation, he's like, that's not the truth, Ellen. He is the king of gaslighting, because every single situation, he's like, remember the time that we did it? Was so blah, blah. And she's like, that's not the truth, Ellen. Just thinking about it makes me mad. She does a lot of things as the relationship progresses in order to please Strain. It's not things that she doesn't know what she personally likes or what she personally dislikes. She's lost herself at this point, and a lot of the things that she does is to please him. They really said, this man, this Mr. Gaslight really said, you chased me. What? He said, you chased me. Mr. telling a 15-year-old, oh my god, your hair looks so pretty. It looks like the color of the sleeve. Okay, telling a 15-year-old, oh, do you know what I want to do to you right now outside of the dance? Mister, you chased me. No, she didn't. No, she didn't, you ugly bitch ass, ugly old mother man. The best thing this guy ever did for himself, for anybody, is get a vasectomy, okay? That is the only good thing he's done in this entire book. He really said, when you started chasing me. I'm sorry, what? That is not what happened. Going on with the psychology of victims of abuse and survivors, it talks about the family. You get into the home life of Vanessa and Vanessa's mom. I just felt so sorry for Vanessa's mom and all of the things that, you know, Vanessa's mom maybe couldn't change. Yes, it changed Vanessa, but it also changed the people in her life, the people who knew about this relationship and could do nothing to stop it, and the guilt that they must feel the weight that must be on their shoulders as well for all of this to happen. Strain was so manipulative. He basically gaslit her, manipulated and groomed her, told her who she was. He told her who she was, to the point where she lost herself. He used her. All the while, he sets up steps so that if hits the fan, if they get caught, because he is her teacher and she is also 15 years old and you are 42, he sets up steps behind the scenes so that he can get away scot-free. And he had backup plans, gets her kicked out of school, and all the while she defends him the entire time, apologizes to everybody, telling everybody that she lied about their relationship because she had a crush on him, gets shamed, throwing Vanessa under the bus, and her poor ex-friend, the people who were there for her, who wanted to help her, was such a good friend to her, looking out for her, she also shamed them and wasn't a good friend to them. This is not a black and white story, different from what the cover may be, okay? It is not a black and white story. It is hints of gray, I guess, whatever. It's all gray area where the people in this book are not super villainous or super good. There is no plain victim or plain bystander or plain villain, except Strain, because f*** him, okay? Strain, this entire time, gaslighting her, manipulating her, grooming her, telling her who she was as a person, that he could have this temporary little doll to change as he wished. And she just graduate high school and just move on with her life. And then so would he. He changed the trajectory of her life, gave her the most traumatic experiences, all the while trying to convince himself that he was a good person when he is really just the worst kind of pedo. Like, the worst, okay? It's giving Taylor Swift Right Where You Left Me. That is maybe where Vanessa was the entirety of the book. That song, Right Where You Left Me, she is still living in 2000 when it is now 2017 in the book. And so is Strain. It's just so utterly frustrating that he really thought he was inkling of good. Not only did he gaslight her, he gaslit himself into thinking that he was an okay person, even if it wasn't illegal. You cannot tell me a lot of the scenes in here, she wasn't pressured to do the things that he wanted. She was 100% put under pressure to do some of these sexual acts, and he really thought that that was okay, and that they were gonna be okay, and it was gonna be sunshines and rainbows. He's the most selfish person I have ever read in my entire life. And I've read a bunch of billionaire romances, okay? We know billionaires are horrible. To be able to cope with everything that happened to her, being able to live with herself after 15, 17 plus years that she has known Strain, she forces herself to change the memories, makes herself be okay with everything that happened because it's the only way that she can survive it all. For so many years, she has convinced herself of so many of these manipulations that she's stuck in those beliefs, and she truly doesn't believe that Strain has done this to any other girls besides her because she's special. He has convinced her that all of these other accusations are lies, and she fully believes that because how else is she gonna cope? How else is she gonna survive? As a way of self-preservation, she doesn't do the thing that most allies would say you should do. You should speak up, come together, like the Me Too movement era especially, and say what happened and speak your truth and tell your story, but she just couldn't. The book makes it very well aware about the reasons why, her psychology as to why she is doing this, why she's doing things, honestly, that doesn't make her a very likable person. The only thing I would say that I didn't like about this book is that there are a lot of lines that make it seem like Vanessa is culpable in a way because she tempted him. And she let him do it. And he never would have done it to other girls if she didn't say yes. She said yes, so she is culpable. And I can see that that is in what she truly believes. But I just feel like that's the only part of the book where you were not at all culpable for anything. You were not at fault for anything that happened to you, truly. He came on to you. He touched your leg, he said these weird things to you, was way too close into your personal space. And just because you tempted him, He is a grown adult. He should have known better to keep it in his pants. That's one thing I didn't like about it, that they made her sometimes be a little bit culpable, but it's also a reason why I really liked this book too, because of the complicatedness of it all. It is a very complicated mess of a situation. Now she bears the weight of being the inciting incident, of being the first. And if it wasn't for her, it would have been the next girl who would have said yes to what he actually wanted and played along with his games. In a way, making it seem like she was at fault is maybe what she thought. This whole book, it's just Vanessa throughout the 17 years that she has known this man being in denial. I think as a character, she wasn't really well thought out. I think that that's the point. She's lost herself, and she is basically a self-insert for anybody who has been through similar things that she has. On page 319, it says, "Hearing him, seeing him, everything I do is being laced by him. I can't go back there. I just feel I can't lose the thing I've held onto for so long, you know? I just really need it to be a love story. I really, really need it to be that. Because if it isn't a love story, then what is it? It's my life. This has been my whole life." That is the overall arching theme of the book and theme of what Vanessa was going through this entire time. Sadly enough, people might see this book and the things that happen in here as a once in a blue moon type of situation, a 1 in a million type of situation, that things like this don't really happen. People get caught. There's also mentions about the school system, their boarding school, and how it didn't really handle things well, and holding the school accountable for not protecting the kids. Sadly enough, even in my personal life, and I can't really get into it much, I have known multiple people, not just one, multiple people that this type of situation has happened with. So it's a lot more common than we think. It's also another thing is that it can be anybody. It is more likely than not a person who looks super invisible. Someone you would never expect, does not stand out in the slightest. This story in particular is one that I hold really close to my heart because I have known people who have gone through this. It's just heartbreaking, but I feel like the way that the story panned out and the way the internal dialogue of Vanessa and everything, all of her internal things that she thought, everything that she was going through, all the other characters as well, all of the side characters, and how they dealt with it. It's pretty on par is the experience of a lot of people. Overall, I give this book a heart-wrenching 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said before, it is not a book I would ever want to read more than once. But after I finished the book, it was a book that I had to sit and think about. And I couldn't stop thinking about it for a few days. And when a book does that, when I can't let go of a book after a few days, that's when it's kind of reached that 5-star status to me. Once I've closed the book and I don't really think about it that much, I'm like, okay, 4 stars. If I cannot stop thinking about a book, then it's kind of reached that level of 5-star. This book was really poignant. It is a lot different than the other books I've reviewed on my channel because I love to read a rom-com. I love to read contemporary romance. I love to read fantasy. I love to read things about escapism. But this was an escape into hell. This is an escape that I do not want to go into. I would never want to escape here in this book, but I would definitely recommend it to you if you can handle those situations, because it is a 0 out of 5 stars if those things trigger you. If grooming, gaslighting, SA, Corey, R-wording affect you, because it is in there a lot. Purple. That is every scene that man is in. I know for a fact because purple means ill, disgusting, want to throw the book across the room. If you cannot handle things like that, I would definitely not recommend it to you. But if you feel like you want to read a story that is gut-wrenching, feels important, is also really engaging, there's not a point in this book where I felt bored. The language is very easy and contemporary to read. I just would recommend it if you can stomach those triggers. It touched on this topic in a way that felt sensitive, that felt subtle, that wasn't too on the nose, and it was from a different perspective than what we usually get. Did I gag? Did I get frustrated 1,000,000 times over? Yes. But I think that the way that this author wrote it it was done on purpose. Like, I gagged at all the parts I was supposed to gag at. I was frustrated at all the parts I was supposed to be frustrated at. I also think it did it with a lot of subtlety, and it didn't push the message into my face. It just told you who Vanessa was, what she was going through, and how she's dealt with her life now. And it was done in a very interesting, engaging way. Why she didn't want to be considered a victim and why she didn't want to speak up. Why she's this unlikable character, but we still want to know her story. Because of all of that, I did give it a 5 out of 5 stars. At the end of this book, author's note was really interesting as well. The author talks about reading Lolita when she was 14. She fell in love with the book Lolita. I read Lolita, and in doing so, I fell in love. I loved the language, yes. This is what people often say after professing admiration for the book. A hasty classification. The prose, not the story. Who could love the awful story? But for me, Lolita was the epitome of romance. On my nightstand, it sat along Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. Each seems to me a great love story cut from the same cloth, full of obsessions and abuses. On the back of the cover of my copy of Lolita was a blurb from Vanity Fair calling it the only convincing love story of our century. If anyone ever dared challenge my love for the book, I cited this quote. Old men started calling me charming, captivating. They said I made them want to do things they shouldn't. They called me dangerous. Women saw it too. I wrote in an attempt to make sense of it all. And as I did, short stories emerged about a girl and a middle-aged teacher who noticed her, and by noticing her, made her special. Under his gaze, she transformed into more than a silly teenage girl. She became worthwhile. To write this novel, I unapologetically centered Vanessa in a first-person, present-tense narrative, forcing the reader to experience the story through her voice. I textured the prose with the trappings of her teenage world and the current of violence that runs through virtually every girlhood. I imagined the novel I wished I could have discovered alongside Lolita at 14. How it might have felt then to read a book that told her story rather than his. I wrote for my younger self. I didn't try to transform her. I made myself take her seriously. This is Vanessa's story, and Vanessa wanted to make it a love story, because that's the way that she could cope with it. And this entire book is a callback to Lolita, and it is a parallel to Lolita. That was a really interesting takeaway from the book as well, to read that author's note. I usually never do that. I usually don't read author's notes, but I did it for this one. Let me know your thoughts on if you've ever read this book. I feel like some of you might have. I think I've gotten comments before that some of you have read this book. If you have read it, let me know your thoughts on it. If you hated it, if you absolutely despised it, I can honestly see where you're coming from, because it has so many triggering things in there. I would totally understand if you didn't like it. I would love to hear what you thought about it. If you loved it, please just let me know everything. Let me know all your thoughts. Be respectful about every opinion out there. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in the next video.